The Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio is the Italian brand's high-performance crossover. It shares its engine with the Giulia Quadrifoglio, so it's a 2.9-liter twin-turbocharged V6, making 505 horsepower and 443 pound-feet of torque. But the principal difference you have to know between this and the Giulia Quadrifoglio is you get all-wheel drive with the Stelvio, and that really helps put the power down. This thing has some pretty impressive performance numbers. 0 to 60 has been tested in as low as 3.4 seconds, making the Stelvio Quadrifoglio one of the fastest performance crossovers SUVs in the entire world. It is truly a ton of fun to drive. Let's talk about the exterior styling. In a segment that's dominated by all of the Germans, it's refreshing to see the Italian face of the Alfa Romeo, and I actually like it a lot. I think it's one of the best looking ones in the segment. We've got that signature front triangular grille of Alfa Romeo, and because this is a Quadrifoglio model, you get the vents on the hood. It's a little more aggressive. As you come around to the side, the first thing you're gonna see are those really cool looking wheels, and actually I think the most common thing that friends or people I've shown this car to, even strangers, have said about the Quadrifoglio is, wow, those wheels look really cool. Behind those wheels are $8,000 carbon ceramic brakes. As we continue around, we've got the 4-leaf clover badge, which is signature to the Quadrifoglio trim level, and literally Quadrifoglio means 4-leaf clover. So if you see that on the side, you know it's that 500 plus horsepower, either Stelvio or the Giulia. Around back, since this is a performance vehicle, we have quad exhaust tips, but you notice they're not perfectly level. They're actually slightly angled, which I think is really cool. Got the Q4 badge back here, which means it is all-wheel drive. Overall, I think the Stelvio is a really sleek and nice looking crossover, and in Quadrifoglio form, it's definitely aggressive, but not over the top, and I think it's one of the best looking ones in the segment for sure. It seems like the Stelvio Quadrifoglio has all the right ingredients. It looks really good, it has plenty of power, but what is most important about a vehicle like this is how it drives. So let's hop in it and see what it's like. Now that we are inside the Stelvio, let's start off by talking about the interior. And one of my absolute favorite parts of this vehicle, the highlight, is going to be the steering wheel of the Quadrifoglio. It's got a combination of different materials on it. We've got some leather, we have some Alcantara, some suede, some carbon fiber, and we've got this red engine start-stop button on the steering wheel because race car. And then behind the steering wheel, you have these gigantic shifter pedals. They're column mounted, they're made of solid metal, and they feel so satisfying. They've got like the plus and minus machined out of them. And when you're pulling them, you feel like you're driving a supercar, even though you are in a crossover. Really responsive transmission. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. It's got some other nice touches on the inside of the Quadrifoglio. There's really nice white and green stitching across a lot of these interior panels. We've got a mixture of some carbon fiber, some leather. The seats are leather and Alcantara, which is also pretty nice. They're very supportive. And then I've got a couple of complaints though. The infotainment has a pretty big screen here, but it's not a touch screen. And if I'm honest, the UI system is not the most intuitive. It takes a little bit to get used to it, to figure out what's going on with it. And then another big complaint that I have is this vehicle is equipped with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, but because the screen is not a touchscreen, it's infuriating to use. The Alfa Romeo infotainment is controlled via one of those rotary dials that you would find in like an Audi MMI system or a BMW iDrive. But imagine trying to use your smartphone without the touchscreen ability and having to scroll through with a little rotary dial to various icons and then clicking it. It's kind of infuriating and slightly irritating. It has a pretty good Harman Kardon branded sound system, and again, I think the material quality feels pretty nice. I can't speak to the longevity in terms of how reliable the interior things and rattles and stuff. I have heard some stories about people with Alfa Romeos having a couple things, but in my experience so far, the interior quality has been great. The materials are great. It's got a more clean and simplistic Spartan design to it. It's not as over the top as the Germans, and then that does correspond to a slight deficit in terms of the features there. I do have heated steering wheel, heated seats, but that's pretty much, I mean, it has lane keep warning, it doesn't have lane keep assist. And now I know this is the vehicle meant to be driven, but this thing stickers for $94,000. That's pretty pricey. And like lower tier cars have lane keep assist now. Some of the other tech and luxury features aren't quite up to the level of some of the German competitors in this segment. That being said, it's comfortable, it's spacious, definitely more practical than the Giulia would be with the pretty big trunk in the back. But the truly important thing about a vehicle that has a 4-leaf clover on the side is how does it drive? And I'm happy to report that is where the Stelvio Quadrifoglio is one of the best in the segment. We first should talk about the way it sounds. I mentioned I love the steering wheel and the paddle shifters. The other part of this vehicle that I absolutely love is the powertrain. That engine is a great engine. It is so much more charismatic and exciting than the engine that you would find, the straight six in like a BMW M3. That's how I felt when I drove the Giulia Quadrifoglio. It's 8-speed automatic transmission, but it rips off great shifts, fast responses. I'm in dynamic mode right now, and you can hear when I downshift, when I upshift, it'll pop. It doesn't have a lot of modern performance cars now have those like insane pop, crack, popcorn noises on overrun. This doesn't have that. And actually, when I first got it, I was like, something feels like it's missing, because even my RS7 stock will do that. You think about a Huracan, the Jag F-Type, they're like da-da-da-da-da-da when you let off the gas. This doesn't do that really. But it sounds really good for a turbocharged 6-cylinder. It is technically, I believe, derived from the Ferrari V8, the twin-turbo V8 that you find in something like a California T. The Stelvio Quadrifoglio is fast, beyond a doubt fast. There have been tests by magazines 0 to 60 in one of these in as low as 3.4 seconds, which makes it one of the fastest SUV crossovers out there. It's impressive. That all-wheel drive system really does help this put the power down a lot better than the rear-wheel drive only Giulia Quadrifoglio. But beyond being fast, as a crossover, it naturally has a higher center of gravity. But when you're driving it, it doesn't feel like it's going to tip over, it's ponderous or anything. It's fun to throw around in a way that I honestly, I tried out a Macan GTS recently, and I was almost bored. It was clinical. It didn't have the excitement. It was, objectively, it was a very great vehicle, but it didn't have the emotion of driving the Stelvio felt like it had. Even when I drove a non-Quadrifoglio, just a regular Stelvio, I was like, this is a pretty nice crossover. So they've taken those ingredients and made them even better. This thing has $8,000 carbon ceramic brakes, which brake very strongly, but as with the Giulia Quadrifoglio, it's brake by wire, and they've improved the feel, I feel, slightly. Now, I haven't driven a Giulia Quadrifoglio in a couple months, but the feel isn't still quite there. It's really hard to modulate and be smooth. If you're going like performance driving, you're like hard on the brakes on the track or something, it's not as bad. The carbon ceramics brake very, very hard. But if you're trying to be smooth and daily driving and come to a stop at a stop sign, there's a bit of a learning curve to figure out how to be able to brake smoothly, because it seems like the zone isn't as big and the feedback isn't as great. So the feel of the brake pedal is not my favorite. But if you combine the way this thing sounds, the way the power chain pushes you back and you just get launched forward, and then, hello, there is a deer. Okay, goodbye, deer. The way this thing drives, it's a ton of fun. It's addicting. And even just cruising around normally. So you've got various drive modes. I'm in dynamic now. If I go to normal, everything quiets down. The exhaust valves close. Suspension is a little less firm. It's all a little bit normal. And then you go into, there's an A mode, which is essentially like a efficiency mode. And I actually noticed when I was in the efficiency mode on the freeway, if you just let off the gas and you're coasting down, it seems to, I believe it decouples the transmission, because engine revs will drop to about 1,000 RPM instead of sitting right around 2,000. And then when you get back on the gas, they wake back up again, efficiency's sake. But I typically would just leave it in normal or drive. If you tick it all the way over the race, everything perks up. You get your collision assist goes away, your ESC is off, you have this red damper that's lit up, which makes the suspension super firm. So I don't usually do that because the roads in Michigan are garbage, but race is your most aggressive mode. But if you're on the road, you should just leave it probably in dynamic mode. This, speaking of the modes on this vehicle, is another complaint I have. You can't independently control them. You don't have that level of granularity like you would find in a BMW M car, where you can independently set up your dampers, your drivetrain, your transmission. You can't do that here. You're kind of locked into either D, N, or A, or race mode. So if I want loud mode, but I want comfortable suspension and normal everything else, you can't control the valves like that. I believe on a newest, like a refresh maybe, I think they were adding independent control, but I still couldn't set up my own individual mode where I want ECS off or ESC off, and I want this, and that. You can't pick and choose in this Quadrifoglio. So at the end of the day, how do I feel about the Stelvio Quadrifoglio? I've spent a week with this vehicle, and it's left me a little bit confused. I like it more than the Giulia Quadrifoglio, which is one of my favorite vehicles to drive in that segment. I actually think it's more fun to drive than the M3, but paradoxically, I would rather own the M3 due to some other factors. This vehicle, I think I like even more than the Giulia Quadrifoglio because it brings a lot of the excitement of that engine, the feel of it, the design, the Alfa Romeo emotion, but offers up a lot more practicality. With all-wheel drive, it's better at putting the power down, it's a little bit more spacious, and it's just as fun to whip around. But the thing is, vehicles, once you reach to a level of price and also of performance, it becomes more of an emotional purchase. This is not something you want to read a bunch of brochures and read all the different stats online and compare them in a spreadsheet and decide, because objectively, this might not come out looking great. Yes, it has a 505 horsepower twin turbocharged engine, all-wheel drive, 8-speed automatic transmission, but you have to get behind the wheel and spend some time with this because it's like the intangibles that make you start to really like it. It's the way it sounds, the little braps on the upshifts that it does, the feeling of these gigantic metal paddle shifters. I can't stress how much I love these things. Every time I get in a Quadrifoglio, I'm like, yes, more performance vehicles should have column-mounted fixed gigantic paddle shifters. They are amazing. It rides a little bit on the firm side. It seems to be missing some of the tech content for a $94,000 vehicle. The interior feels a little bit more on the basic side. I don't love the infotainment, but then you take a look at the car on the outside, and it looks so much more. It looks better than the German cars, I feel. It makes an Audi look kind of boring and plain. It's different. That is what you have to value, having something a little more unique. You're going for the Italian choice here. You're not going for the clinical and efficient German luxury performance crossover. You want the Quadrifoglio. There's that saying that to be a true car person, you have to own an Alfa Romeo at some point. And I think among the modern Alfas, the Stelvio Quadrifoglio is absolutely the one to get. It's really exciting, and it truly feels like it's built to be a driver's vehicle. I don't particularly care to be sitting in the other seats. I want to be here holding this amazing carbon fiber, leather, and Alcantara steering wheel, feeling these paddle shifters, and listening to that twin turbo V6 rip upshifts and downshifts as I'm feeling 505 horsepower fed to all the wheels. And then you get out and you park the car. Every single time I parked this car and walked away, I stopped to take a picture or I stopped to look at it. Even though it's not in my favorite color, I don't like silver cars, I think the styling of it is the best in the segment. Those wheels look so cool. Almost everybody that I showed this car to or saw when I parked, they were like, wow, those wheels look really, really cool. Really like this car. It was a ton of fun. If you are thinking about a vehicle in the segment, this is the unique choice. The Macan, the Mercedes, those are the safe options. This is for something that you want a more exciting experience. Now, we have to slightly address the fact that everybody is going to comment how it's going to be unreliable, and Alfa Romeo does have a reputation. Now, having spoken to many owners, been very good friends of a person who owned a Giulia Quadrifoglio for several years, I think some of the issues have become overinflated. There was that big article where a big publication had a Giulia Quadrifoglio and had catastrophic issues. I believe that was an earlier build vehicle. Now, this has been going on for a little bit longer, so maybe they fixed some of the things. Now, after spending only 1 week with it, I can't comment on this car's long-term reliability, but it's something you have to keep in mind. I mean, people buy Range Rovers and they know things are going to go wrong with that. Same with a Maserati. You have to be cognizant of it, and I think it would be a disservice to recommend this car, but not caveat with you might have some electronic issues, which were some of the things that my friends had experienced. Now, in my week with it, I will say it's been great. It's been a ton of fun driving every day. Minor little things that I think are more design related, nothing like where the car wasn't working like it should have. I did notice a few weird glitches with the comfort access of the doors unlocking. It didn't seem to want to cooperate with me sometimes. But anyways, this car is about it being driven. You might have a little issue, and then you hop in it, throw it in dynamic mode, and go on your little back road, and it'll solve all of your problems. I hope you guys liked this video. Make sure you guys comment, subscribe, turn on your notifications. Thanks for watching.